Something in the Maine woods mimicked my voice, and it still haunts me. In 2017, I was 16 and visiting my uncle's remote cabin in northwestern Maine with my grandfather. My mum's side of the family is indigenous, and we were heading up for a visit during the fall season. The cabin was small, just enough room for my auntie, uncle, and grandpa. So I was told I'd be sleeping in the camper, which sat deeper into the woods behind the main cabin. The first night went by like any normal visit. We had dinner, shared stories, and laughed together. As the night came to a close, I grabbed a flashlight and started my walk through the trees toward the camper. It was chilly, clear, and quiet. About halfway down the trail, I turned off the flashlight to look up at the stars. That's when I noticed how quiet the forest had become. No wind, no insects, no distant owls or rustling trees, just absolute dead silence. A cold dread settled deep in my stomach. I suddenly felt like I was being watched. Something primal inside me screamed, "You shouldn't be here. Run!" I bolted the rest of the way to the camper, slammed the door shut, double-locked it, closed the blinds. I tried to laugh it off, but the feeling wouldn't go away. All night, I lay there, wide awake, hearing faint rustling and what sounded like footsteps circling the camper. I told myself it was just curious animals. I didn't believe it. The next morning, everything looked normal. I thought about telling my grandfather, but I figured he'd just say I was being dramatic or too used to city life, so I kept it to myself. That evening, I asked if the family dog, Frank, a huge German shepherd, could stay in the camper with me. They agreed. On the walk back, I noticed Frank was on edge, ears twitching, eyes darting into the woods. I wasn't imagining things. That night, sometime around 3 or 4 a.m., I woke up and found Frank standing stiff on the bed, staring at the wall of the camper. His hackles were raised. He didn't bark. He didn't move. He just stared. The silence outside was crushing. In the morning, I packed my bags to leave that afternoon. I took Frank out into the open field near the tree line and threw a ball for him to chase. After a while, I kicked it too hard and it rolled toward the edge of the woods. Frank ran after it, full speed, but then skidded to a stop. He froze several feet past where the ball had landed. He stood stiff, ears pinned back, fur bristled, and wouldn't move, just staring into the trees. I called to him once, twice. Nothing. Frank always came when called. This time he didn't even flinch. I walked toward him, grabbed his collar, and tried calling his name louder. That's when it happened. A few seconds after I shouted, my voice echoed back to me from the woods. But it was wrong. It sounded like me, but warped, distorted, like it had been chewed up and spit back out. I froze. Then, a second later, I heard my voice again, louder, closer, and screaming. I ran. I didn't even look back. Frank followed, but he kept glancing over his shoulder the whole way. I burst into the cabin, shaking and crying. My aunt comforted me and told me it was probably nothing. But the way she looked at me, it was like she knew something but didn't want to say it out loud. I left that afternoon and haven't been back since. Something was out there in those woods. It watched me. It mimicked me. And whatever it was, may it wasn't human. Number 2, I talked to my dad and his friends about a haunted house in the woods, and it still freaks me out. This is an old story my dad has told me a few times over the years, and with Halloween coming up, it's been on my mind again. I've never seen the place myself, But after hearing the same details from multiple men 20 years later, the mental image is burned into my brain. My dad is not the type to scare easily. He's a preacher's son, very religious, and doesn't believe in ghosts or anything paranormal. He worked as a firefighter for years and has seen some horrific stuff. But this story still shakes him up. Back in the late 1980s, my dad and some friends used to hike behind our family farm near a creek and waterfall. One night, they took a new path behind a neighbor's land just to check out some unusual animals, emus and other exotic pets. Deep in the woods, they stumbled on something completely unexpected. A house straight out of a horror movie. An old, rotting cottage that looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. Just looking at it gave my dad this horrible, heavy feeling. But curiosity won, and they went inside. The walls were covered in strange symbols. Some looked like Latin, others completely foreign, and graffiti in English about satanic rituals and human sacrifice. My dad insists some of the symbols were painted in dried blood. He knows what blood looks like. There was a narrow staircase leading up to an attic bedroom. The walls up there were covered in more symbols, and chains with manacles hung on one wall. The floor was stained with dark, dried puddles that had seeped into the wood and walls. The whole room felt wrong. Then they heard footsteps, fast and heavy, coming up the stairs, like heels clicking on wood. They turned, expecting someone behind them, but no one was there. No new footprints in the dust, nothing. Panicked, they rushed out of the house. Now here's the weirdest part. After leaving, they tried walking back home from different directions, using a compass to navigate. But every time, no matter which way they went, they ended up back at the front door of the house. Even though the compass said they were going away, they kept circling back. They tried over 10 times. These guys knew those woods like the back of their hands. None of it made sense. One of them started feeling feverish and nearly fainted. They decided to leave for good. As they turned to go, the sick guy pointed to the attic window. There was a tall, hunched figure standing there, a woman, but with no face except two enormous dark eyes. She shuffled back into the attic and headed toward the stairs. That was the last straw. They bolted. They ran through the woods and ended up 3 miles away near the interstate. When they got back to my dad's house, one of the guys swore he saw the same figure watching from outside the kitchen window near the woodshed. They tried to chalk it up to paranoia. 5 years later, they went back and the house was gone, just a pile of rubble. I used to joke with my dad about going back, but between trespassing laws and the fear of what might still be there, it's not happening. I interviewed all the guys separately years later, and they all told the exact same story, down to the minute they entered and left, and how the figure moved. So what do you think? Spooked young men? Or something darker hiding in those woods? The lights are off. The stories are done. But something's still here. Like, comment, and subscribe before it notices you're listening. See you in the next nightmare.